Hi, today we're doing our Counselor Education 404 project, and it is based on socioeconomic status and sexual orientation. And my name is Ramsey Martinez, and today we have
Thomas Lamb,
Madison Setzer,
and Jamie Bonk.
All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into our project. So first, we're going to start out with a sexual orientation prompt. John, who is a senior employee, has come to you with a problem he's recently discovered with Micah. John is one of the top performers in the group, is always on time, and has never had problems on the job. However, John has recently learned that Micah, his direct report, is a member of the LGBTQIA+ community. His concern is that because Micah has direct contact with the public, it may affect the company image, and wants to know what he can do to give Micah more backseat in the job. So we can kind of break down the scenario real quick. Obviously, John feels excluded due to his sexual orientation, and Micah is also afraid to break it to John since he is in the public eye of the company. He doesn't want people getting the wrong idea. So then Micah and John, what they need to do is come to a conclusion on the best possible outcome for both their personal views and for the company. So, and leading off of that, we're going to go into some challenges of people with sexual orientation who are in the LGBTQIA+ community. And some challenges we're going to go through is that while many countries around the world may have prohibited such actions, the LGBTQIA+ community still faces discrimination in the workplace. Still. The following are examples of their biggest challenge in the workplace. And I'm going to hand it off to Madison, and she's going to run you through a couple of those challenges.
Hi everyone, again I'm Madison. So like Ramsey said, I'm just going to start giving you some of the main challenges that this community faces in the workplace. So the first that we all noticed and wanted to tell you all about is the difference in pay and the inability to take advantage of opportunities such as promotions and leadership roles in the workplace. So we did a bit of research, and according to Catalyst.org, 22% of the LGBTQ Americans have not been paid equally or promoted at the same rate as their peers. And then additionally, we found another quote that said the LGBTQ adults comprise 6.2% of people who earn less than $36,000 a year. So to kind of elaborate on that, imagine, if you were being discriminated against in the workplace and it kept you from taking certain advantages, that would be very hard for you to handle. And so that's a point to put yourself in the other person's shoes and say, well, that's not right, because that's not what I would want to be treated as or be a victim of. And then another thing that we found was that it can hinder individuals' work performance due to fear and judgment in the workplace, and that kind of goes off what I was just talking about. When you feel uncomfortable and you're not being treated correctly, you're not going to give your 100% efforts into your job because of that fear and judgment that you may face. And we found on the same website that almost half, which would be 46% of LGBTQ workers in the United States, are closeted in the workplace. And it elaborated on the fact that persons that identify in the LGBTQ community are, quote, exhausted from spending time and energy concealing their authentic selves. So I think it's important to recognize that and be courteous and cautious of how you're acting around people that may not identify as you do. And then the last thing was just blatant unfair treatment, such as bias, slurs and derogatory comments, and rude and unnecessary gestures that obviously wouldn't make anyone feel comfortable in the workplace. So those were just some main challenges and things that we should recognize and try to do better. So the next slide, we're going to go into the next part of the project, which is socioeconomic status. So I'm going to read the prompt really quickly, and then we'll go into those challenges. Brief intermission. Okay, anyways. Silas just started work at a law firm. His husband, parents, and in-laws are his accomplishment. This is a new chapter for them and will hopefully provide an opportunity for them to purchase a home. One day during lunch, Silas was having small talk with one of the partners, and he asked what area of town did he reside in. Silas lives in a low-income housing community, and he reluctantly told the partner that the street's close to his neighborhood, but did not want to be specific because he did not want to be judged. So basically, Silas feels ashamed, a bit embarrassed, sensitive to his socioeconomic status compared to others, and that prohibits him from telling the truth. So now we're going to go into some challenges that these low SES income individuals face. So first, there are differences in pay and position, which may create issues between employees. There could be tension between them, jealousy even. Of course, competitiveness comes out for those higher paying positions, excuse me. And then there are issues with their mental health too, because if you're feeling all this tension and jealousy, that may lead into being self-conscious and irritable and feeling unworthy compared to others who may be better off, they might say, than them. And then we also have here socioeconomic status may affect their quality of life as a whole, and that can hinder their work performance as well, just as we kind of mentioned with the sexual orientation, not giving your 100%. And so those effects include a decline in psychological and physiological health, gaining access to basic essentials and needs for everyday life just to survive and live. And then also it causes excess stress if you're trying to provide for X amount of people in your family or for yourself. That can definitely add on to that. And so I'm going to pass it on to Jamie, and she's going to elaborate on those 3 examples a bit and just give a bit more insight into the challenges. So, Jamie.
I'm Jamie, and as Madison said, I'm going to elaborate a little bit more about some of these challenges and how they affect those in the workplace. Some stressors in the workplace are increased with low SES, leading to negative physical health issues. You see this a lot in low-income communities and just anywhere. Psychological health is also affected by SES status, and with instances such as fatigue and sleep deprivation. This can cause a cycle of unbalanced sleep, work, and life.
Just a hard balance.
Hard
balance.
And that can also affect you in the workplace as well when you go back home or back to work. Psychological health can be affected by low income due to decreased access to quality foods. So in some of these low income areas where they don't have quality foods or access to healthier foods, this affects how they perform. And according to the American Psychological Association, low SES and its correlates, such as lower educational achievement, poverty, and poor health, ultimately affect our society. So we're going to move into some solutions and recommendations with the first prompt. In order to be inclusive and respectful of the LGBTQIA+ community, here are some solutions and recommendations that we've come up with. Workshops and informational opportunities on the LGBTQIA+ community to promote understanding and acceptance in the workplace. We feel that it's really important that people around understand what comes with acceptance of these communities, working with these people in these communities, and how it affects the workplace and yourself. Being respectful of everyone's sexual preference and ask questions. It is important to get to know your colleagues, and if they feel more comfortable explaining themselves how they would like to be treated, what you can do better to help better perform them in the workplace, it's always good that you ask those questions and get the information that you need.
Hey everyone, I'm Thomas. Another thing that we see a lot with the LGBTQIA community is separating personal opinions from work. A lot of times, like especially nowadays, people have all their opinions about politics and stuff that's going on in the media and stuff like that. This can affect people who align with the LGBTQ community, and this can really like affect their mental health and stuff like that when we're in the workplace. Stating clear titles in their meetings to clear up any confusion could also help with people who are in the LGBTQIA community. Just stuff like making sure that when people have specific pronouns they like to use, just making sure that every day that we're using those pronouns to make people feel included, because that's really that's what matters, and that's how even when you're working for a company, people who, if you can work together as a team, work better like that. People who feel included, everything in your company will, be better. Companies can create new policies to encourage inclusiveness. This could be anything from like firing people for discrimination. If you are making it hard for people who align with this, then to work in at the company, then there's no value to that. You're not getting anything done. So I think specifically stuff like including new policies like firing people for discrimination and stuff like that. Use of gender-coded language. It's nowadays, especially with the pronouns and stuff, it's hard to make sure that we're always including everybody and making sure that everybody's pronouns are being used, but we can eliminate this problem by just stop using gender-coded language. That would keep people who don't necessarily want to be called he, him, or she, her, people who don't feel included in that sense, they can feel less excluded by stopping the use of gender-coded language. Company conferences and events such as a Pride Day, making, again, it all comes back to inclusion and making people feel like they're included within the company, and that just boosts morale, and that's how stuff within the company flows. So now we're going to talk about some solutions for the socioeconomic status and people within like who sort of live in like low income areas. Employees in low SES status deserve a better work-life balance. This is something that we all know. And we, rather than just saying, hey, why can't we just pay people more? Let's just go ahead and pay people more. We sort of tried to break it down and find some more solutions that sort of went further into it and just a bit deeper. A better work-life balance would allow people to spend more time with their families. This just means like, not having to work from sun up to sundown, 16-hour days. Nobody wants to do that. That leaves no time to spend with your families, and even that alone can lower somebody's like incentive to work and not make them not want to be a part of the company or a part of what they're doing anymore. Creating mandatory vacations. This is just another way to create incentives within the company, and it allows people who may not necessarily like have the ability to afford taking days off and stuff like that. It may allow them the financial freedom to spend a few extra days with their families and get stuff done in their own personal lives that they can't do because they're working so much. Mandatory paid sick days. I think this just goes without saying. There's been times in everybody's lives when we're going to work and we just can't do it. And if we were in a situation where if I was living paycheck to paycheck and I could not afford to pay my bills, that would mean I couldn't afford to take a day off. So if I'm sick, I have to work through that. Well, with mandatory paid sick days, that avoids that situation. It allows people who, again, need that financial freedom to take those days without worrying about what they're going to do to get by. Seasonal pay bonuses. This is just another great incentive to get people to work, but it also helps people who can't, who need the money. Seasonal pay bonuses would allow people, during the holidays to buy more stuff for their families, maybe stock up on groceries for the year that they may need, get more gifts, and it just creates more disposable income that people who are in low income areas might not necessarily get to experience. Company-funded childcare services for full-time employees. I know that we saw a lot of times in our research that it was hard for people to find places for their kids. Childcare is already expensive, so by companies implementing paid childcare services for their full-time employees, that would allow people who work all day to not worry about where their kids are. They could know that there's somewhere close by, and that would just be another stress off their backs. Incentives for hard work, such as gift cards, time off, and raises. If you're doing a good job, get rewarded for it. If you're working hard, you're working from 12, 13, 14-hour days, you should be getting paid like that. You should be getting overtime, double time, extra time on Sundays if you're working holidays. That's just another way to create more financial freedom for people in low-income situations. And finally, companies can provide a carpool system to supplement people who take the bus or walk for lack of transportation. A lot of times people who live outside of the city where these high-paying jobs are. They can't afford cars, or they can't afford the transportation needed to get to these jobs, so they have to take the bus or they have to rely on somebody else. Well, with company carpool systems, that would totally abandon all that the problems with them having to find a ride to work, and that would allow them to ensure that they can make their the pay that they need to survive, or not survive, but survive.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But so that was the solutions for our socioeconomic status, people in low income areas, and I believe that's it. And we will go to our sources now.
So we have some sources here where we found some of our information and some statistics that we used during our project. And I just want to go ahead and wrap it up and kind of point out that there are various issues in the workplace, such as low SES status and sexual orientation, but those are not the only ones. But we just wanted to point out and explain the problems and some of the solutions of those issues. And that'll be all for our project.
Thank you.